We're delighted to have Aaron Tinjum, the Vice President of Energy from the Data Center Coalition, here with us today for a virtual roundtable on energy issues and data centers. Also here with us is Tony Chicaro, Energy Officer at the U.S. Embassy, who will be serving as the moderator. Before we begin, I'll go over a few administrative items. This session will be conducted in English and will be recorded. The speaker is not an employee of the U.S. government, and his remarks and expertise do not represent the official policy of the U.S. government. For main participants, please have your camera on, but remain muted unless you're speaking. For those joining as observers, please keep your camera and microphone off for the duration of the program. Following the speaker's remarks, brief introductions, and the initial discussion between the speaker and the moderator, we'll open up the session for questions and answers. If you have any questions, please use the raise hand function in Zoom. You may also submit questions via the chat box, either in English or in Japanese. I'll add one last note on language. While we will be speaking in English, we understand that some of the terms may be quite technical, so if anybody would like clarification on something that was said, please feel free to ask in the chat, and our program team will do their best to provide a brief translation. Now, let me introduce you to the speaker. Aaron Tinjum is Vice President of Energy for the Data Center Coalition, the membership association serving as the voice of the data center industry. Before joining the Data Center Coalition, Aaron spent more than a decade in the utility industry, which most recently with Xcel Energy, where he helped advance key policy and regulatory initiatives related to demand-side management, grid security, resource planning, and utility-scale clean energy projects. Prior to Xcel Energy, Aaron served as senior writer for both Direct Energy and O-Power. His writing has been cited or featured in several industry and national publications. He has also held fellowships with the Clean Energy Leadership Institute in Washington, D.C., and the University of Minnesota's Humphrey School of Public Affairs. Aaron received a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Carthage College, a Master of Public Affairs from the LBJ School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas at Austin, a certificate in financing and deploying clean energy from Yale University, and is a proud alumnus of the Teach for America program. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Aaron for his presentation.
Thank you, Mitchell. I appreciate the introduction, and it's an honor to be here with everyone. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy days for a discussion around data center development in the United States. As Mitchell mentioned, I serve as the Vice President of Energy for the Data Center Coalition. We are the National Membership Association for the U.S. data center industry. And Mitchell, if you can just let me know if you can see my screen now, I will proceed.
We can see it. Thank you, Aaron.
Wonderful. Thank you. The Data Center Coalition, we also go by the acronym DCC in the United States. We are also focused on advocating for a business climate, government policies, and investments that help support the growth and competitiveness of the U.S. data center industry. And we are also here to serve as an information resource, providing education to elected officials, regulators, grid operators, utilities, community leaders, and other stakeholders about the data center industry. For your awareness, DCC has 38 different member companies, all of which are data center owners and operators. Our membership includes the very largest of technology companies worldwide, and we often refer to those companies as self-performing enterprise data centers. They often construct data center facilities to support their own operations and services. The vast majority of our membership are what we would call multi-tenant build-to-suit data center companies. So these are companies that are constructing data centers for one or more tenants. They may build and lease data center capacity to one large Fortune 500 company, or they may lease their facility to upwards of 200 different companies in which they are dividing server infrastructure within their facilities. Finally, I would note that you may be familiar with some of these companies I would say many of our companies have data center infrastructure and investments within Japan currently. The data center industry within the United States is growing rapidly. So you can see here, we recently commissioned a study by a firm called PricewaterhouseCoopers, really to analyze the impact economically of the data center industry for the United States. As of 2023, the industry had over 600,000 direct jobs, which was a 51% increase from 2017. That is a significant increase compared to all other industries within the United States currently. In terms of GDP impact, over a 6-year period from 2017 to 2023, that translated to $3.5 trillion in GDP for the United States over that 6-year period. And in addition to jobs, a big component of the value of hosting data center infrastructure within the US is really around tax revenue generated from hosting these facilities. So in 2023 alone, data centers contributed over $160 billion in tax revenue, which was a significant increase over a 6-year period, 146% increase since 2017. So the industry is a primary economic driver for the United States at this time and is also delivering jobs and tax revenue to the communities that elect to host these facilities. And it's important to note that there's much discussion in the United States that is around how much growth can we expect when it comes to data center development, and which percentage of the growth is hypothetical versus growth that we can really plan around. I think one way to look at data center development is really around the construction spending. So for the first time last year, the US Census Bureau began releasing construction spending data specifically for the data center industry to get a better sense of how much of the proposed projects are really resulting in construction activities. So you can see, according to this chart, in July of 2023, seasonally adjusted, put in place construction spending. I think if I was to translate that to basic terms, uh, actual concrete and steel in the ground was around $19 billion in July of 2023. That number increased to $31 billion of July of 24. And based on recent data released by the Census Bureau earlier this year, we know that in July of 2025, it was $41 billion in this past July. So investment continues, and importantly, actual construction of these facilities that were once proposed continues to translate and move to the construction phase. There are many estimates, however, around how much growth can we truly expect moving forward. One such projection comes from McKinsey and Company, which projects that data center demand will increase from 82 gigawatts in 2025 upwards of 219 gigawatts by the end of this decade in 2030. The Data Center Coalition, we do not produce any forecast of future demand as an entity. However, we are very focused on ensuring that especially utilities, regulators, and grid operators are really finding ways to build greater confidence around expected growth from data centers. And we really believe that that requires new forms of communication, new forms of collaboration, transparency, and importantly, revisiting how we build load forecasts in the United States currently. The last point I would make on this slide is that you see there is a light blue color in which it is breaking out non-AI workload versus AI workload. In the US, I would still say a majority of data center development is really a reflection of demand for cloud services, cloud computing, and cloud storage. We do expect over time, though, that a greater share of data center development will reflect artificial intelligence development. So I mentioned that we are very focused on helping build greater confidence when it comes to anticipating how much load growth we will see, and most importantly, building that confidence so that utilities, grid operators, and policymakers can make investment and planning decisions as it relates to new energy infrastructure. We have specifically in the United States pushed for what we call commercial readiness verification, which really is requiring more information from large load customers as they put in requests for electricity. So that includes things like demonstrating site control. Have they purchased land? Do they have a viable site for them to build data centers? Do they have an electric service agreement with the local utility or energy provider? When it comes to necessary permits that they will need to construct and operate their facility, have they made some level of permitting progress that shows that they are putting forth effort in actually constructing their facility? Are there financial commitments on behalf of the large load customer that demonstrate the viability of their project? And certainly, if we are discussing data centers, does the requesting customer have a track record of actually building and operating data centers? Earlier in my presentation, I showed you all of the logos of our member companies. All of those companies are demonstrated data center owners and operators that have actual physical facilities, and many, if not all, have additional facilities currently under construction. So we think those are things you can expect for data centers, but also customers and that are representing manufacturing facilities and other large demand users. On the other side of the equation, however, we also believe that there should be a revisit of how forecasts are being built by utilities and grid operators within the United States. So we think there is opportunity for greater transparency around what type of information is being input by the developers of forecasts and the assumptions that are being used, and that there should be an opportunity publicly, either in a stakeholder process, a public proceeding, for multiple stakeholders to provide input and perspective on those forecasts. Additionally, in the United States, we obviously have many different markets in many different states, and so the rules within those states can be different. How utilities are developing their forecasts can be different. That leads to a challenge from the data center industry's perspective when it comes to reviewing the forecasts of growth and helping validate to the extent we can. So we have also advocated for creating greater standardization across utilities nationally where possible to begin to develop best practices when it comes to building forecasts of large load. We also believe there's an increasing number of data sets produced by independent third parties within the United States, firms like S&P Global. There's another organization called Data Center Hawk, in which they are producing market data information around data center development. And that information could be used to supplement or help inform the development of forecasts. And then finally, and potentially most importantly, is conducting regular forecasting reviews and backcasting analyses. So really understanding what accounts for any differences between the forecasted growth and the actual outcomes so that everyone has a better understanding of how forecasts should be adjusted moving forward. So we really view large load forecasting and the improvement of forecasting as a fundamental first step. In the United States, we are coming out of a period of relatively 2 decades of flat electricity demand that was mostly offset by energy efficiency. And we do believe that this new era of load growth requires new forms of communication, collaboration, and improving forecasting. We also receive many questions, and it's an important discussion in the United States around what are the benefits of hosting data centers from an energy perspective? Certainly, there are many questions and much discussion around how large data centers can be in terms of how much electricity they consume. Additionally, how fast they are proliferating or how fast they are growing across the United States. One piece that we have tried to emphasize is that while data centers use and can use significant amounts of electricity, they are highly incentivized to be as energy efficient as possible. In the United States, that is either for keeping costs low for their own operations. If it's a self-performing enterprise data center, they want to ensure they are minimizing costs for their end-use products and services. Similarly, if it is a multi-tenant or build-to-suit data center, they want to ensure that they are cost competitive as compared to their competitors. So they are really naturally incentivized to pursue energy efficiency, pursue new server technology, pursue efficient cooling techniques and strategies as well. I would also note that many of these facilities now are enabling the efficiencies and energy savings for all customers economy-wide in the United States. Many energy efficiency programs in the US include smart thermostats, include demand response, could be managed electric vehicle charging. All of these strategies require data center infrastructure because they are cloud-based technologies. And so we really view data centers as being a critical part of the equation in achieving efficiencies economy-wide. Furthermore, there is much discussion in the United States around grid enhancing technologies. So grid enhancing technologies help optimize transmission infrastructure. They provide real-time monitoring and information about transmission capacity. And they're also being used in some places to monitor for wildfires. And so data centers also enable these types of technologies that while they are, representing load growth nationally, they're also representing new opportunities for the economy to become more optimized and more efficient. Beyond that, this industry, the data center industry, has strong sustainability commitments. About half of all corporate renewable energy procurement in the United States has been conducted by companies that own and operate data center infrastructure. The challenge, of course, right now is in a constrained environment, both from a supply and generation perspective and a transmission perspective, is how they maintain these sustainability commitments moving forward. I think we're seeing a period now where those sustainability commitments are really manifesting in next generation technologies that provide clean, firm attributes. So in that vein, I would say small modular reactors are one such technology where you see data center companies investing and trying to advance those technologies. Enhanced geothermal technology, which is based off of natural gas fracking techniques, is another one that some of our member companies have begun pursuing, as well as things like long duration storage, as well as carbon capture. So the industry will continue to support other forms of carbon-free energy, but I do see a lot in the way of announcements and exciting projects as it relates to next generation technologies. Beyond those benefits, from a grid perspective and an operational perspective, data centers, especially those that support cloud storage or cloud computing, are typically predictable high load factor customers. So that means you can really plan around them from a grid management perspective. Um, Typically in places like Northern Virginia, which is largely supporting cloud computing, those can have a load factor of around 80 to 90% upwards. And so these are customers that can help use energy and capacity on the grid and also help you plan around that. Beyond that, affordability is an important topic in the United States and elsewhere. The industry is committed to paying what we call the full cost of service for energy in the United States. So how much does it really cost to deliver energy to that facility? And our industry has demonstrated that it expects to be paying its full cost of service in the United States, in addition to the other benefits that it provides the local communities that host them. I noted the industry support for investments in new technologies. And then finally, I would say that there's an opportunity for innovation with these companies. I know that many on the line here are aware of discussions around co-location. Our industry is leaning in to work with utilities on designing new carbon-free clean energy tariffs that allow them to work with the local utility to finance and support new energy resources. And so I think there is an opportunity to work with these very innovative companies in finding solutions that will not only benefit data centers, but will over time certainly benefit other customers. I just wanted to conclude before we open up for a broader discussion and share some information about where we are seeing data center development internationally. So you can see that this information comes from a firm called Cushman and Wakefield and really demonstrates the market size by operational IT load. And this is in megawatts. So Virginia, for example, here has around 6,000 megawatts as of 2025. It is far and away the world's largest data center market. And then you can also see that I have put an arrow above Tokyo, which is in gold, and that would represent Japan's largest market. You can see that the United States has several other large markets, though not as large as Virginia. Places like Oregon, places like Columbus, Ohio, Phoenix, Arizona, and Dallas, Texas are all experiencing significant growth as it pertains to data center infrastructure. Other regions within Asia, you can see that Beijing and Shanghai are also growing fairly quickly and represent other significant data center markets. And this is the last chart I did want to share. This represents it's information from a firm called CBRE, and it's the total inventory by market. So the difference between this slide and the previous is that this represents the amount of data center capacity that could be leased by an end use tenant. So if you have companies within your market, how much data center capacity is available to be leased. You can see that Northern Virginia, as of Q1 of 2025, about half of the inventory within Virginia was this multi-tenant leasable data center capacity. And you can see that Tokyo, according to this information, has about just under 1,000 megawatts of this leasable capacity. And this information is really more transparent and public. Certainly, you can have private data centers that conceal some of their capacity for competitive or trade secret information. But this is more based on publicly available information, but also gives you a sense of how Tokyo compares to some other United States markets in terms of leasable capacity. I will just conclude by saying again, it's an honor to be here with you all. The Data Center Coalition, while we are very focused on the U.S. data center industry and market, we are here to be an educational resource for others and are here to support our member companies. So I'm happy to, of course, take your questions and engage in a dialogue here this evening or morning in Japan. But if you have questions following today or as you've had more time to process this information, please feel free to email me, and I'm always happy to find time to connect individually. So with that, thank you, Mitchell and Tony. I will turn back to you.
Thanks, Aaron, for the presentation. Before we begin the discussion and Q&A, I'd like to ask each Japanese participant to briefly introduce themselves. Let's, let's try to keep it to about 2 minutes per person so we can save plenty of time for discussion. But if you could, please share your name, your organizational affiliation, and your role or experience related to today's program topic. So I'll call you one by one in alphabetical order. So if we could start with Dr. Kenji Kimura, could you please turn on your mic and introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me today to the such interesting discussion. I'm Kenji Kimura from the Institute of Energy Economics Japan, IEEJ. I'm a senior researcher of Nuclear Energy Group. Today, the relationship between nuclear energy and data center is pointed out frequently, so I'm very interested in this topic. And now Japan is trying to restart some existing reactors, and maybe today I hope the mayor of Niigata Prefecture will accept the restart of one of the existing plants. So the power supply in Japan is changing dramatically in Japan. So I hope the nuclear industry and data center industry can collaborate each other from now on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kimura. Next, could Mr. Takashi Miura please introduce yourself?
Thank you. So I'm honored to join this session and the roundtable. So my name is Takashi Miura, a partner at EY in Tokyo, and I belong to the TMT sector. TMT means the technology, media, entertainment, and telecom sector. I work closely with Japan, global electrical and technology companies, and to support develop the go-to-market strategy or the new business development, as well as the digital transformation for all these companies. So in my role, I have seen the data center industry from the both sides. The one side is like as a data center builder to enter the Japan market. And also, on the other hand, is the Japanese technology provider for the data center industries. So especially for Japanese manufacturers and solution providers, the U.S. data center market is a very promising market for them. So I think today I would like to share the viewpoint grounded in some the discussion with my clients. So thank you very much, I'm look forward to our discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Miura. Next, Mr. Hiroaki Motoki.
Hello, my name is Hiroaki Motoki from TEPCO Power Grid. I am from Transmission System Operation Company, Tokyo Electric Power Company, the largest utility in Japan. And I am from the Department of Power System Operation, and later on being involved in a field of power system planning as well. And I'm also interested in international standardization, and I am actively participating in IEC and SIGRE, something like that. The Japanese power industry is now facing unprecedented challenges of to manage interconnection queues. A lot of connection requests are received by my company, and how to manage from the point of view of congestion management and also resource adequacy solution. Such kind of issues are very interesting to me, and today's discussion is very interesting to me, and thank you very much for providing me this interesting opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Motoki. Next, please, Mr. Shu Munekuni.
Yes, my name is Shu Munekuni. I am with a company called JERA, one of the larger power generation company here in Japan. I head the internal think tank organization within JERA called JERA Global Institute. So I'm basically in research. JERA, as a company, as you may know, we have announced a couple of announcements. First, back in June, we announced a basic agreement with a company called Sakura Internet, where they would set up a data center operation in one of our co-location and next to our LNG facility, power generation plant, taking advantage of the cold temperature from the LNG to cool down the data center operation. This is one of the possibility that we are looking forward to with Sakura. We also announced back in last month, I guess, MOU with Yokohama, city of Yokohama, to discuss about a such operation in the port, near the port of Yokohama and at our power generation facility. We have a pretty large size operation in America called JERA Americas with we are currently thinking about a lot of cooperation with the data center companies there in the US. So relatively closely tied to the data center industry, especially with the future expected growth and power all over the world. So that's my brief background. Thank you for the invitation today.
Thank you, Mr. Munekuni. Next, Ms. Mariko Sekine. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Mariko Sekine from Kansai Electric Power Company, and I work in the Energy and Environment Policy Office at our Tokyo branch. My career spans overseas energy business, including serving as a diplomat at the Embassy of Japan in the United Arab Emirates, where I worked on the renewable energy initiatives. This experience inspired me to explore how Japanese energy companies can contribute to the sustainable future. And briefly about our company, Kansai Electric, our core business is energy, transmission and distribution, information and communication, and business solution. And at the intersection of these four areas, we are now growing our data center business as our new pillar of our company. As a concrete example, together with our US partner, Cyrus One, we are working on the data center development in Kyoto Prefecture with a receiving capacity of 70 megawatts. This project marks our expansion onto the digital infrastructure and support more resilient and sustainable society. Today, I appreciate this opportunity and looking forward to learning from the advanced initiatives from the US today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sekine. Next, Mr. Daisuke Sugino.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Hello. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, my name is Daisuke Sugino from Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry. I am in charge of making policies for constructing and making policies of Japanese economic transmissions. So especially, I focus on the rule making and so creating the good financial environment for constructing transmission. So in circumstances that a lot of companies are building AI data centers and other facilities have intention to connect electric transmission and get electricity from it. So for example, we have a rule to prompt to connect the electronic grid from the companies who have truly plans to connect electric grid such as AI data centers. So the electric companies try to show welcome zone map that shows the area that can connect electric grid as soon as possible. So secondly, so we create some regulate and so new rules to for electric companies to fund constructing electric grid more comfortably. So from these policies, so we want to invite investment from Japan all over the world to competitive and important industry to Japan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sugino. And finally, Professor Ryuzo Yamamoto.
Thank you very much. Yamamoto is my name. I just came back from Spain late last night, and I'm still suffering a jet lag. I'm now a professor emeritus of a Japanese private university named Tokuha University, and my research fields are energy, especially electricity and climate change. Before I joined the academic fields, I worked for an integrated trading company named Sumitomo. You may know Sumitomo Corporation. We have many offices, even in the United States. There, firstly, I was involved in coal mines investment in Australia and North America. In the United States, we tried to open new mines in Colorado and Montana. And there, I spent a lot of money only for exploration and feasibility studies, but couldn't open the mine because we didn't have enough demand at that time, even in Japan. After having spent much money in projects in the United States, Australia, and Indonesia, everywhere in the world, I got a new assignment in climate change for developing a project for greenhouse gas emission credits. Many people told me I'm paying a penalty for coal mines development project in the world at that time. Yeah, that's right. Now I have much interest in electricity supply to data centers in the United States, which should have a huge supply of, which should require huge supply of electricity. And I have a very simple question. Power companies can have enough generating facility for them. This is a very, very simple question. I look forward to discussion today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Yamamoto. Thank you all. It's wonderful to have such a diverse group representing different sectors. So I'd now like to pass it over to Tony for the discussion and Q&A session. I'll just remind you all that you can use the raise hand function in Zoom if you'd like to chime in or ask a question. I know some of you may have submitted questions ahead of time, which is very helpful, but please don't be shy. We want this to be a discussion. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Tony.
Hey, thank you, Mitchell, and really appreciate the opportunity to be with you all today. As Mitchell said, my name is Tony Takaro. I'm an energy officer at the U.S. Embassy here in Tokyo. I've been here a few months now. And one of the best parts of my job is that I get to talk with experts like you all and learn from you and provide that information back to my government so that we can create stronger relationships between Japan and the United States. So let me just start by thanking Aaron for your time and your expertise with that presentation, for setting the stage for our discussion today, and to all of you all for participating in this opportunity. With the flow of the conversation, we received a number of questions from you all in advance. Thank you so much for providing those. I've tried to structure it in a way that we can flow through the discussion based on the questions you provided in advance. However, if you have any new questions, please do, as Mitchell said, raise your hand or write your question in the chat, and we will try to get to those questions. We probably have more questions now than we have time. So, feel free to jump in. There might not be time at the end. So if you have something that's really important to you, please do make time to ask that question. After each question, I will also pause for a moment to see if there are any follow-up questions. The type of questions we have today, pretty interesting. Just a general broad question about the overall regional concentration issues that I think we're all very keen to try to answer. We'll dive in a little bit deeper on some of the electricity forecasting issues, talk about contract models a little bit, co-location that everyone is interested in, some more information about public-private partnerships, site selection, and then maybe we'll go a little bit broader in some of the strategic issues around interconnection, transmission, and then maybe the future for both Japan and for the industry as a whole. So that's kind of the flow. But again, if you want to interrupt with any other question, please do so. So maybe Aaron, this question we received from a number of our experts, and that has to do with the regional concentration problem. Like in the United States, where you have a lot of concentration in Virginia, Japan is experiencing a lot of concentration in the Tokyo area. And of course, with that comes a lot of issues, congestion, bottlenecks, some of the issues around connecting to the grid. And so would really appreciate your insights into some of the ways that the industry has been working with different localities in the United States. Are there insights into coordination that we can learn, forecasting or planning that Japan might be able to draw upon, especially around the concentration issue?
Great, thank you for the question, Tony. And I think one way to really launch into that discussion is considering what are the site selection considerations that data centers take when they are determining where they would like to build and locate a facility. The calculus can change depending on the company and depending on the project, but typically it consists of access to reliable, affordable electricity, preferably clean. It includes access to existing fiber infrastructure and connectivity. It includes access to water for industrial purposes. So water is often used to help some amount of cooling of the server infrastructure within the facility, although cooling techniques can vary depending on the facility. It will also take into account the local climate and the risks associated with locating in that particular location. So a cooler climate, for example, will provide more opportunities to naturally cool the data center server infrastructure. And server infrastructure can generate vast amounts of heat. There are some academic studies that show if you did not cool the server infrastructure within the server hall of the data center, the temperature would increase about 1 degree per minute, at which point you would very quickly encounter equipment failures and issues with the server equipment. Other factors that are often taken into account are land availability and cost, the local tax and regulatory climate. So are there tax exemptions or incentives for building a data center in that location? Additionally, how do the electricity rates or cost of electricity compare with other markets? Finally, I would say that an access to skilled construction workforce and technology workforce when it comes to staffing the facility are also important considerations. With all that in account, though, the overriding factor to all of this at this particular moment is time to market. How quickly can you build and power your data center, especially in a constrained environment? So in the United States, and let's take Virginia, for example, a few years ago, you used to be able to build and power your data center within 18 to 24 months. So you could construct it, and by the end of that 24 months, you could expect to have power lined up for running that facility. Those timelines in recent years have gradually prolonged. So 18 to 24 months turned to 2 to 4 years, to 4 to 7 years. And now in the world's most important data center market, we are looking at power timelines that are longer than 7 years for powering their facility. That has contributed in part to the proliferation of data centers in other markets within the United States. So places like Atlanta, Georgia, places like Phoenix, Arizona, certainly Texas, have all experienced significant amounts of data center development. Other places like Oregon, Chicago, Ohio are also experiencing data center development. And we have even seen a push into markets that have never really had data center development until now, now experiencing proposed projects. And the reason for that is access to power. If you can receive power more quickly than you can in those main markets, you're more likely to consider hosting that data center infrastructure. So if we take into account all of those factors, and if we know that time to market is the most important factor, and that access to reliable power is the pacing challenge to all of that, it really becomes a question of where can you find power, and that is how you can begin to direct some of the development. So from my perspective, leading our energy efforts, it's really a dialogue and partnership with utilities, working with the utilities to understand where there is access to power, where does it align well with utility infrastructure. You know, until this recent moment, there was often a question, and we have the expression chicken or egg, which one should come first? Should you know where the power is going to be, or should you know where the data center infrastructure wants to be? And so there's been a lot of dialogue between the utility and data center industries to figure this out. Often what is occurring is the utilities have economic development departments, and they also partner with economic development authorities within their jurisdictions to help market specific sites that may have power. I think from the industry's perspective is important to ensure that that information is given fairly to all companies, that they have access to that information at the same time, and that it's not preferably given to one company or another. But That would be really our perspective on locating data centers and understanding that all of those factors play a role, but the places that are likely to experience the most development are those that have power lined up today.
Thank you, Aaron. I really appreciate the comprehensive overview of some of the issues around regionalization. There's a follow-up question that we received from one of the experts that was asking a little bit specifically about whether we're still seeing a lot of concentration in the Virginia area or whether that's been migrating over time. And I guess what's maybe kind of driving that? Is it the industry demand that's driving it, or is it the I guess the availability of energy? So kind of getting to the heart of the chicken and egg question that you were asking earlier.
Yes, so Virginia is facing some significant constraints, beginning with transmission constraints, but very quickly followed by generation constraints. There are land availability constraints. In spite of these headwinds, Virginia continues to grow significantly as a data center market, and in fact, will still experience significant development in spite of power delays in the coming years. I think as I mentioned, there are other markets that are also experiencing fast growth, and some of those markets are really in Georgia, Texas, and Arizona that are growing very quickly. But last point I would add, Tony, is that we often receive question as to why is Virginia, of all places in the world, the capital of the data center industry. It's a multi-pronged story in part as it relates to the infrastructure. So if we think about the undersea cables that connect the United States with now Europe and Africa and South America, many of those run up through Virginia. Over the years, there was once a company called America Online in the early days of the internet that was headquartered in Virginia. That built out some of the internet fiber infrastructure, and subsequently that led to a congregation of data center infrastructure that has continued to expand. And in fact, one of our member companies now has purchased the former headquarters of America Online and is in the process of developing a new data center on that site. All of that coupled with a favorable tax climate that really focused on ensuring that development continued in Virginia are really some of the two main reasons that Virginia has received the amount of development as it has to date.
That's super helpful, and I had a chuckle when I heard American Online. As a kid born in the 80s, I definitely remember getting those free CDs in the mail every 6 weeks. So good to know that some of the work that they did back then is being put to good use now. And I guess what was, I think, eye-opening for me is I thought I knew the answer to the question, and it's just because there's so much government demand in the Virginia area that's why all the data centers is there. But I'm actually hearing as well, it's a bit of a correlation, right? Not a causation with all the government demand. You have all the fiber optic cables, but that's what's actually really driving it. And so I'm assuming that's probably the same in some of these other locations, like Phoenix, and I think I saw Columbus was pretty high on there as well. It's not necessarily that there are industries that are there; it's the fact that there's actually the infrastructure, the access, the water, and whatnot. Am I understanding that kind of correctly now?
Yes. Again, it comes down to a combination of those variables. Is there existing infrastructure there? Can you receive power within a reasonable timeline? Is there some form of tax incentive or exemption for the equipment that goes into those facilities and so on?
Super helpful. I think I'll maybe pause there and see if there are others who would like to jump in with their questions on this topic of regionalization, or if they want to provide some of their own insights, please do feel free. And I'll just pause, and then our next topic, maybe we'll move into forecasting. So let me see if anyone has anything.
Can I ask a question? Yep. Thank you very much for your insights. That is very helpful to understand site selection criteria. So my question is about is there any change of the priority of the site selection criteria? I now understand the time to market is the most highest priority for data center builders, operators. But especially for example, the sustainability. So in the few years ago, the sustainability energy power is one of the key criteria that data center provider is interested in. But is there any changes those priorities? This is my question.
Yes, I appreciate the question, and I would say that the industry still highly values sustainability. And so there's been several announcements in the United States as it pertains to either restarting old nuclear facilities or currently closed nuclear facilities. In addition, there's also been announcements by companies to help support the extension of existing nuclear facilities and improving the economics of those facilities by being a guaranteed large off-taker that can share in some of the costs of continuing those nuclear operations. So I think there is a recognition by our industry to continue pushing forward on carbon-free electricity, but also a recognition that many of these facilities are 24/7, 365. They run around the clock. Certainly, it comes down to what is the exact computing operation, but typically somewhere is demanding cloud-based services at any given time, and it requires a data center to support those operations. And so our members are really looking to align their demand with carbon-free forms of energy. Small modular reactors are something our industry is investing in, and certainly working and hoping towards the end of this decade and the early 2030s as well. There are projects announced now for enhanced geothermal power. There are announcements around long duration storage to see if there are ways to help facilitate greater flexibility with the data center, or to also integrate with other clean forms of energy as well. But sustainability is still important, but the industry also faces headwinds that there is not quite enough carbon-free electricity in the United States at this moment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you as well for the question. I think it's I think where you're getting at is how we're kind of really seeing that there is just this need for trying to accelerate infrastructure development. I too was also struck by the fact that these time to markets have been increasing from it used to be 18 to 24 months, and then it's actually now over 7+ years. And like that's I think we're used to like always trying to decrease the time in most industries, and the fact that this is actually going in the opposite direction is pretty astounding. And so I guess we had a couple of questions that were related to that. And one was whether we're seeing that drive an increase in acceptance for the use of thermal power. And I would also say, or maybe add to that, an increase in acceptance for nuclear power, including, as you mentioned, SMRs.
Yes, and I think for just some broader context, I noted that time to market or speed to market, how quickly you can power a facility, is the overriding factor. What I didn't mention is why is that the overriding factor? That is because there is unprecedented demand for data and digital services, unlike ever before. So certainly there is no shortage of discussion internationally around demand for artificial intelligence and the potential that it holds. But even coming out of the COVID pandemic, our demand, at least in the United States, for cloud-based services for meetings like this, Zoom meetings, things that rely upon the cloud are higher than ever before. So we know in the United States, on average, Deloitte tells us that US households have 21 devices connected to the internet. So Americans have more phones, more computers, more tablets. They're wearing smartwatches. They have smart thermostats. They have streaming devices. They have security cameras. They have video doorbells. They even have smart bird feeders. There are lots of devices that are generating and collecting more and more data than ever before. So our demands of the cloud continue to increase at a time that artificial intelligence is really taking off. Apart from the household, we know that in the United States, 95% of Fortune 500 companies, their products and services have also become dependent upon cloud-based infrastructure. You used to, in the United States, just go to the grocery store when you were going to buy food. Nowadays, you can order your groceries online from no shortage of various providers. And there are countless services now where commerce is simply taking place online. Online banking rather than physical banking is another example. During the pandemic, things like telehealth really took off. So people are now conducting medical visits over the internet. Increasingly, medical records are stored on the internet, but also physicians and medical clinics collect more information during a patient visit than they previously did. So our economy and modern lives in the US, but also globally, have become dependent on data center infrastructure and increasingly interwoven with that infrastructure. The last piece to all of this is that about 2/3 of the global population are currently connected to the internet, which means that 1/3 of the global population do not have internet access to date. So we expect that to be yet another tailwind and demand driver for data center infrastructure into the future as that remaining third of the global population becomes connected to the internet over time. So all of that kind of helps explain some of the demand that's really underlying all of this.
Super helpful, Aaron. I appreciate that. And maybe that's a good time. This is a good time now to maybe come back to the question about forecasting. With all the increase in demand, right? Forecasting is more important than ever. And you had a slide where you kind of talked about some of the different ways that we can work on forecasting. And so I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more, going up into a little more in depth about that process. And I see that we have a question from Motaki-san as well in the chat. Where he's maybe, I think, also kind of getting at this from the viewpoint of how industry independent system operators and regional transmission organizations can kind of contribute to this process as well. So if you want to address that in this answer, or we can pull that aside as a separate question as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm Motoki from Tokyo Electric Power Company. I am from utility industries in Japan, where a lot of data centers are being connected to our footprint, our network. Well, when it comes to talking about the congestion issues, it should be handled not only by the regional DSOs, distribution system companies like Dominion Power or PEPCO, PICO, something like that, but also very high voltage level transmission network may create a bottleneck like the PJM interconnection, New York ISO, Mid-continent ISO, something like that. So when it comes to talk about such kind of bulk power network reinforcement, it takes more than 10 years, 15 years. But last 1 mile creation of distribution line requires only 1 year, 2 years. So there is a very big timeline discrepancy between them. So one of the issue may be how to reflect the voice from data center industries onto the long-term master plan of nationwide grid development inside ISO or RTO. So if you have any good suggestion or what is the current challenge, what is occurring in the US, such kind of information is very interesting to me. So it's the question from my side.
Yes, and thank you for the question. A lot of my time and members of my team in our industry are engaging increasingly with RTOs, regional transmission organizations, and independent system operators within the United States. There's both challenges and issues at the local utility level, and then as you branch out to the regional level. And maybe, Tony, I will tie this back to your initial question around forecasting, is that we know that utilities, and I will take the region of PJM, the PJM interconnection in the United States does a portion of the East Coast, so it includes Virginia. It includes other growing data center markets like Pennsylvania, Ohio, and also even includes Chicago. All of the utilities within those 4 states and other states as well are producing load forecasts of the demand that they are expecting to see. Those forecasts are being done by them independently. They have their own processes for building those forecasts. They make their own decisions about the inputs and assumptions in developing their forecast. And then they hand off that information to the broader PJM, in which PJM then creates a regional forecast of demand throughout the PJM footprint. We have been working as an industry to identify ways that data centers can be more helpful in that endeavor. And so I mentioned during my presentation this idea of commercial readiness verification, that when utilities are building that smaller localized forecast, that they have more information about the load and requests within their service territory. So when that gets to the regional level, PJM or any RTO has more information that's consistent across the utilities, that they can have more line of sight into how viable a project might be, how quickly it might actually come online, and then subsequently make more proactive planning determinations about things like transmission capacity. So we have advocated for, at the federal level, streamlined permitting reform for new transmission. In particular, we have expressed support for interregional capacity, because in some instances, various regions would benefit if there was a transmission line because it would connect it to another generation source that may be experiencing demand in another part. So we are really working to identify ways to engage. I will also say that PJM, so again, that RTO ISO, is currently running a stakeholder process called the Critical Issue Fast Path for large load additions. The whole process is focused on how do we solve this challenge of load growth in supporting data centers in a timely manner. A few different ideas are coming up in that discussion, and one that the Data Center Coalition has worked with 4 different governors and currently 2 utilities, including Exelon and PPL, is around a voluntary bring your own generation program, in which the data centers would have a pathway, if they help contribute to a new generating resource, would receive expedited interconnection to the broader grid as a recognition of helping bring that generating resource. Similarly, we have advocated for voluntary flexibility programs. So I should note that the data center industry is not monolithic. There are different computing operations that can occur when you think about cloud computing, when you think about machine learning, when you think about artificial intelligence. And those different training operations or computing operations can exhibit different grid characteristics. And so if a data center can offer flexibility, we are supportive of programs that would allow that flexibility to effectively be helpful to the grid operator, be helpful to the utility. All the while noting not all data centers can offer flexibility, especially if they're supporting, government operations or if they're hosting medical records or supporting financial transactions. But we are really working with the RTOs, working with state commissions, working with governor offices to begin to develop these programs and pathways. And all of this is occurring in real time. So where things are at next week could be certainly different. And I'm happy to remain in touch with you and provide updates as we have more information as determinations are made.
Motoki is speaking again. Thank you very much for interesting explanation. I think your organization is facing some kind of conflict with the consumers industries, for example. One of the issues is who incurs the cost of large expenditure for transmission network upgrade. One of the options is to socialize it, reflect the tariffs on the normal consumers publicly. Another option is to be incurred directly by the end users, like beneficiaries of AI industry, something like that. So there is a conflict between them. So such kind of communication is very, very interesting and important. Anyway, thank you very much for interesting explanation.
Yes, thank you.
And yeah, thank you both for the question and for the answer. I'm kind of curious, and I want to put you on the spot, Aaron, but you had mentioned that we've seen some reforms to try to streamline some of these connection processes. Are there like certain either pieces of legislation or particular states that you think are doing it particularly well that perhaps policymakers here in Japan or utilities can kind of point to as maybe what the industry sees as a preferred one, or are we not quite there yet and we're still looking for maybe something better down the road? Or I don't know if you can comment on that. If it's too early to say, I totally understand, and we can move on to our next set of questions or see if anyone else wants to explore this some more.
Yeah, it's a great important question, Tony, and I would love to say that someone somewhere has figured out all of the answers, but that's just not the case yet. One area though that I would point to is that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission in the United States issued what they call an advanced notice of rulemaking, proposed rulemaking, and a NOPR is the acronym. That process, comments are due tomorrow, and so a wide range of stakeholders, including utilities, grid operators, data center companies, will all be bringing forth their ideas on how we can streamline power and provide speed to power for data centers, but also onshoring of manufacturing capacity in the United States as well, recognizing that there are, of course, economic growth opportunities associated with that, but also national security implications. That is a process that I would, to the extent you can, follow to watch quickly or very closely, as I think a lot of the forward-looking positioning from the federal government is going to be shaped as part of that. And I know we've had a brief discussion about co-location or locating data centers with generating facilities. That is a central topic as part of this process. And so our industry is very eager to receive clarity from the federal government about how these types of co-location arrangements could work and would be permissible in the United States.
Thanks, Aaron, and I appreciate that you brought up FERC because I think that's relevant, and we had a couple of questions excuse me, on that topic as well. And I don't know if you can, I don't want, maybe you can't get ahead of tomorrow's report, but we had a specific question about the Susquehanna nuclear power station, but just, you might not be able to comment on that specific case, but maybe if you want to broaden the lens a little bit, that would also maybe be helpful just to kind of maybe untackle or untie some of the questions around, how the industry looks at these different types of contract models for co-location with either nuclear power plants or other power plants. What type of factors maybe influence those choices between front of meter and behind of meter? Maybe what lessons we could kind of learn as utilities and developers, regulators, and just kind of getting at some of the fairness issues that people have brought up around this topic. How, from an industry perspective, how would you kind of look at this?
Yes, and I'm happy to touch on co-location generally. And I also participated. FERC last year held a technical conference on co-location, which I participated in behalf of our membership. And at that technical conference, FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, was really seeking information on whether co-location is a viable solution, that is, to locate a data center adjacent to a generating facility or in close proximity. And some forms can take what we would call behind the meter, so not necessarily on the broader grid, but behind the meter with the generating facility. Our industry has worked obviously very closely with both utilities and generators, and as part of that, we developed what we thought were some guiding principles on how responsible co-location arrangements could occur. Certainly a driving principle would be open access, that these types of arrangements should be permissible. But our industry, as with all consumers, require a reliable electricity grid. And so in order for such an arrangement to be responsible, a grid impact assessment should be conducted before the arrangement would be permissible. That you should be determining the potential impacts on local grid infrastructure, as well as grid stability and reliability. Apart from reliability, affordability is an important topic. And so we also asserted that there should be a ratepayer protection should a co-locating data center draw power from the grid rather than the generating facility. There should be a tariff in place for that data center to pay should it benefit from the broader grid. Beyond that, we had principles around community engagement, so that communities would understand the arrangement and the purpose and benefits of it. There should be opportunities for collaboration and innovation, and then certainly in line with the industry's sustainability commitments, data centers should still strive to mitigate any increase in emissions from that arrangement. The specific project you mentioned, Tony, it was brought to FERC. The arrangement was rejected at that time. And since then, the two companies have come to an agreement making it a front of the meter arrangement, which brings the project effectively back onto the broader grid, and through a power purchase agreement, that data center will be supported. But we still look forward to continued discussion, particularly as it relates to new generation and new data centers. Is there an opportunity to efficiently site them together to mitigate the required transmission upgrades that would be needed to support those facilities?
Thanks. I really appreciate that. I think maybe I'll pause just here for some time. I know there are a number of questions about co-location. And just let me see if any of our other experts would like to ask any follow-up questions on this interesting topic, or if they have any of their own comments to provide. So please, for any of our Japanese experts, please feel free to ask a question or make a comment.
And while the experts are thinking if they want to chime in, I'll just drop in to say, although this discussion has been great, and I'm sure there's many more questions, we are drawing close to the end of our allotted time. So if we could just keep it to a couple last questions or comments, and then we can wrap up, and then maybe even continue the discussion offline.
Maybe I'll just ask a quick one that's I think somewhat related to here. But you mentioned this concept of energy tariffs. That's kind of new for me. And I'm kind of curious about that. Like, are there certain states or cities? Is it being done at that level? And is there like one that looks interesting that you think some of our experts here might look at as a potential model for Japan to consider?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Tony. And I should clarify, just given our global context here, is that when I use the phrase tariff, I'm not referring necessarily to trade tariffs. I'm referring to utility tariffs, which in the United States are really a package of provisions as part of a agreement between a large customer and a data center or another large end user. We have seen some trends with various utilities across the country really focused on, again, building confidence that a large project will come to fruition and that they will be there to use the power if the utility has to build new infrastructure. So some of the trends we have seen at the state level are really defining the tariff not by data center, but as a large load tariff. So, if it's a large manufacturer or if it's a large data center and they are, let's say, 100 megawatts or 75 megawatts, they would all fall under these requirements. Things like minimum demand charges that if utility and grid infrastructure is built, that there's some level of minimum demand that would be paid by that end use customer to ensure the viability of those projects. Things like exit fees. Should a large load customer leave before the end of a contract term that is also stated, that some form of payment would be included there. Some level of collateral upfront to provide assurance to those developing the infrastructure as well. I think our industry's perspective is we're not opposed to any of those provisions. We're supportive of them. I think the important piece for us is that they're reasonable, they're balanced, and that there is evidence really supporting the exact provision and that they are distinguishing between actual risk and perceived risk.
Super helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Aaron. And I know we've had here at the embassy some conversations with our counterparts here in Japan about some of these different options that might be available, including like the minimum demand and whether there's a role for government to actually play in supporting some of those as well, rather than putting it all on the industry itself, but to help with forward projecting. I think if there are no other questions on this topic, maybe we just go ahead and kind of jump to like maybe a more of a wrap up question and just a little bit about the future. I mean, Japan is such a huge market for U.S. data companies. Like, what do you see, for the future here in Japan for U.S. data center companies, and then for the industry as a whole? Like, what are the technologies or solutions that you see the data center industry kind of needing as we head into the next I know it's really hard. Everything's moving forward really quickly, but next 10 or so years.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Tony. And certainly, as I noted earlier, many of our member companies have data center infrastructure in Japan, which really indicates it's a country and a market that has benefits. And when you think through some of those siting considerations I mentioned earlier, that there are appealing aspects to the market that draw the industry's attention. Certainly, as I mentioned, time to market and access to power are those overriding considerations at this moment. Access to clean, firm, or carbon-free power is always the preference that can align well with data center operations and the sustainability commitments. And also, you know, we continue to expect innovation in the space. These are technology companies. Technology is always evolving and improving with time. You know, we expect facilities to continue to become more efficient. We expect chip technology to continue to become more improved. And so we will continue to work with our members on identifying those innovations. But certainly, if you follow what they are investing in, what they are announcing, things like small modular reactors, things like liquid cooling, things like long duration storage and geothermal are all the ways the industry is trying to ensure that while we may be in a constrained electricity paradigm today, that in the future, at some point, that we have those clean, firm technologies that will help support continued data center growth and conversely support all of our lives in modern economies.
Thanks so much, Aaron. I really appreciate that. And I believe we may be just out of time, so I'll turn it back over to Mitchell.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Aaron, Tony, and all of the participants. I know we could probably continue this discussion for hours, but Aaron might have to get to bed over on U.S. time. But we encourage you, all of the participants, with thank you for submitting your questions, and we encourage you to connect after the fact if you have unanswered questions or you want to explore these topics more. Before we close the program, I'd like to invite you to participate in a survey to share your comments and feedback about the program. This really helps us with providing good programs and useful content. So please do complete the survey. You can use the link that's in the chat or the QR code that you see on the screen. And there is the option to complete the survey with Japanese or with English. So you can just check the language option on the survey. So I'll just say thank you all so much again for joining us today. Thank you for your questions. Thank you to Aaron for your insights and Tony for moderating. And we'll leave it at that. Thank you all and take care.
Thank you.